Everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I wanted to take you through a deep dive into my cholesterol numbers on a strict carnivore diet over the past 2 years, and what I think they actually mean in the bigger picture of my overall health. This isn't just about numbers on a lab report, it's about context, adaptation, and how my body is thriving on a fat-dominant metabolism.
So let's start with the conventional story. LDL cholesterol is often called the bad cholesterol, and ApoB, the protein that coats each LDL particle, is viewed as the most causal risk factor for heart disease. The standard view says the higher your ApoB and LDL, the greater your risk, period. No nuance, no context, just higher always equals worse. And to be fair, in large observational studies of metabolically unhealthy populations, higher LDL and ApoB levels do indeed track with higher cardiovascular risk. But here's the thing, my context is very different now. I've lost 185 pounds, my fasting insulin is low, my inflammation markers like HSCRP are low, my triglycerides are low, my HDL is high, and my resting metabolic rate is about 500 calories higher than what would be predicted. I'm not the typical study subject eating a standard American diet and struggling with any degree of metabolic syndrome. I'm fat adapted, thriving hormonally, and living what I call metabolic abundance. Now here's a powerful comparison. When I was 410 pounds in November of 21, running on a carb-dominant metabolism, my LDL was only 111. That might sound pretty good on paper, but the truth was I was inflamed, I had metabolic syndrome, I was insulin resistant, and in fat storage mode. My body wasn't thriving. There were fewer LDL, not because everything was efficient, but because body fat wasn't being used. Energy was being hoarded in fat stores, not distributed for vitality. Now, after my transformation, the picture is completely different. I've adapted to burning fat and producing ketones. My metabolism runs hotter. My resting metabolism is 500 calories higher than expected, and my body is humming along. And with that comes more LDL and ApoB traffic, more trucks on the road. Not as a sign of dysfunction, but as a sign of an energy system in full use. In a glucose-dominant system, LDL traffic is quieter. In a fat-dominant system, LDL activity ramps up. That's what's happening in my case.
So what we have here is a tale of two metabolisms that I want to go over briefly. In this first city, when my carb-dominant metabolism at 410 pounds with an LDL of only 111, the roads are jammed with glucose cars. Insulin traffic lights stay red, trying to control the chaos. LDL trucks and HDL recycling trucks are trapped in gridlock, surrounded by burning cars, pollution filling the air, and corroding the roads, contributing to them crumbling. Firefighters and repair crews scramble, but they can never seem to get ahead. This city lives in constant crisis mode, overwhelmed, congested, continually on the verge of breaking down. But in the second city, fat-dominant metabolism, where I am after 2 years carnivore, the story changes dramatically. The roads are smooth, wide, and flowing. LDL trucks deliver, HDL trucks recycle, and the ketone train, a byproduct of burning fat, runs clean and steady down the center. The power plants, mitochondria, hum with abundant energy, no smog, no chaos. Insulin's lights are green, traffic flows easily. Firefighter and repair crews stand ready, but they're calm, maintaining rather than firefighting. And in the background, the massive stadium rises above the city, a symbol of my elevated testosterone levels and higher than expected resting metabolic rate. This is not just a functioning city, but a thriving, high-performing city. So just to zoom in a little bit, it's not just about the number of LDL or ApoB trucks on the road, it's about the quality of the roads themselves. If the arterial highways are smooth, well-paved, and maintained, trucks can move safely without causing pileups. That's what low inflammation, low insulin, and healthy endothelium look like. But if the roads are cracked, inflamed, and full of potholes, even a modest number of trucks can spell disaster. That's what my old carb-dominant metabolism looked like, poor road conditions. Today, in fat adaptation, my arterial roads are in much better shape. So even with more LDL traffic, the system is safer and more efficient. The trucks aren't the danger, it's the condition of the roads they're driving on. Now, let me steel man the other side. Critics will say it doesn't matter how healthy you look, how much weight you've lost. High ApoB is inherently risky because each particle can enter the arterial wall. That's the lipid hypothesis boiled down. And I take that seriously, but if that's true, why wasn't my lower LDL of 111 at 410 pounds protective? Why did my metabolic health decline while my LDL looked quote unquote normal? Numbers outside of context can be misleading. If LDL is the whole story, then the sick version of me should have been at low risk, but clearly that wasn't the case. There's a group called lean mass hyperresponders, or LMHRs. These are people who are lean, low carb, or ketogenic and see their LDL skyrocket, but with great triglyceride to HDL ratios and excellent, overall metabolic health. My story isn't an exact match. I haven't always been lean, and my BMI is still around 34 or 35, which is a good 10 points higher than most male LMHRs. But metabolically speaking, I'm much closer to them than I am to someone eating a standard American diet. My triglycerides are low, my HDL is high, my insulin and inflammation markers are low, and I'm very fat adapted. The truth is, we don't know the long-term risks for people with my history, my lean muscle mass, and my sustained transformation when it comes to elevated LDL and ApoB. But here's what I do know. This way of living has added years to my life. The quality of my life, my energy, my health markers, my vitality and recovery have never been better. So I am willingly part of this N=1 experiment. I can't wait for 20-year studies to be completed. I have to live my life now, and right now I seem to be thriving. Now, to truly prove LDL and ApoB are causative outside of metabolically unhealthy populations, the studies would need to be done in healthy, fat-adapted populations. Right now, most of the evidence seems to come from people eating, more or less a standard American diet: high carb, high insulin, high inflammation, and that's just not my context any longer. Research on people like me is just beginning. The LMHR studies that I mentioned are emerging largely through crowd-funded efforts. They're not a perfect match for me again, but those participants are usually leaner, and I haven't always been lean, but metabolically, again, I'm closer to them than I am the standard American patient. So the reality is there's probably no strong economic incentive to fund long-term studies on people like me. I'm not a pharmaceutical target. I don't fit the mold of what big trials want to study. So in many ways, I am the experiment. I don't know what the long-term risks are, but I do know this. Like I said, my quality of life, my energy, my vitality have never been better. From an evolutionary perspective, our ancestors didn't have constant carb access like we do today. They relied on fats and ketones much of the time. In times of abundance, the liver had to traffic more fat. In times of scarcity, the system conserved. What I see in my own data is a metabolism that trusts me now. It knows I'm feeding it consistently. It knows it can run hot, and it shows that trust with a higher resting metabolic rate, stable glucose, and efficient fat trafficking. So what's the takeaway? It's this: elevated LDL and ApoB aren't automatically red flags when taken out of context. In my story, they reflect a thriving fat-adapted metabolism that's burning hotter, running cleaner, and operating in abundance. The real danger is in ignoring context, pretending the liver is at war with the heart somehow, and reducing a complex system down to a single number or two. My approach is to look at the whole city: the roads, the traffic, the engines, the pollution, the outcomes. That's where the truth is.
I find your duck food disturbing.